glory, and I am thy servant. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. We are doing our monthly Prophecy in the News show, and I have with me my son as co host, Justin Garcia. Justin, are you there, son?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, very blessed, and there's definitely no shortage of news to discuss for this past month, huh?
No shortage of insanity? Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let me go ahead and turn it over to you and I'll follow your lead. But yeah, there's a lot of craziness, so a lot to catch up on.
There is, and it seems to always be that way around,
Yeah,
this every 4 year mark. It's just,
right.
it's craziness. But I first have to start off with a little praise report that Joy and I found the gender of our child is a girl. Hallelujah.
Whoop whoop.
Yes,
Praise
so
God.
we did have some three miscarriages in total. So, we decided to do the ultrasounds just to make sure that everything was going okay. Just the peace of mind that you can have when you hear the heartbeat of your child and
Yes,
see it and
yes.
make sure it's okay. That really is just such a blessing that we were able to do that and to see our little girl. But we're going to be naming her Eliana Guwan Garcia. And Eliana means my God has answered, or Elohim has answered. And Guwan, her middle name, is actually Korean for salvation. So we're so excited. And I do want to just say hello to everyone that's joining in the live stream. It's awesome to be here with you all again for this current events and Bible prophecy study. It's always a great time every month as we do join the last Wednesday of every month. But shalom to Tammy and Braided Prepper and Neela Wafer, great name. Exodus
I love that.
14:14, Flat Earth Underground, shalom to you all. Yeah, for everyone that is joining, reconnect to nature. Love that name. Flat Earth Arkansas,
Yes.
awesome to see you. Marie Brazier, shalom sister. Jimmy Favero and Trick Vic Mine. Tree Mistress, awesome to see you all. Jesse Gutierrez, Tommy Anakin. Yeah, it's awesome to be gathered with this family. I love the family that, we have developed in this channel and doing all the
Yes.
research and the Bible prophecy studies and our digital readers club studies. It's always just such a pleasure to be able to meet with you all and to be reminded that, we're not crazy because we don't buy into the CNN narrative. So it's
Right.
always a blessing to be able to join with you, especially, and to be able to discuss some of these mainstream media news stories in a way that aren't covered on the mainstream propaganda outlets. I did post a few days ago on the YouTube channel the thumbnail and a request that if there were any newsletter articles that had been verified that you would like us to discuss, to comment on there. And we had a few comments, so maybe we'll be able to touch on those later on. But probably the biggest headline in the world news now is that Biden has taken office. And within a couple
Yes.
days, it becomes even more clear that his skills of obeying his puppeteers is greater than ever. As I don't know if you saw it, but there was a video that circulated of him signing quote unquote executive orders with the press. And
Hmm.
Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, of course, he's got all these people by his side just standing there watching him sign this thing. And as he opens it up, you can hear him say, I don't know what I'm signing. And then he goes ahead and signs it. It's just it's a show. It's like clearly a stage.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then he goes off and signs on what's supposed to be his order,
Right. His
right?
agenda,
Right. So he signed a lot of these quote unquote executive orders recently that are shaping our nation and its future. And I think most of them are supposed to go into effect like in February sometime. But one that I really want to bring attention to is the readmission of our nation into the Paris Climate Agreement. We talk pretty often on globalism and the encroaching unification of the world government and the false messiah who will reign over it. And people still call us conspiracy theories. But
Right.
I have a feeling that it won't be much longer until a globalist government, like the United Nations, achieves full authority over all the countries of the earth.
Right.
President Xi of China, he gave his first major public address since Biden took to the White House just a couple days ago, I believe, at the Davos World Economic Forum. It was on Monday. And he underscored that the nation must, quote, abandon all ideological prejudice and immediately abandon a Cold War mentality. And he also goes on to say that world powers must stay committed to international law and international rules instead of staying committed to supremacy. And he also vowed his support for the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, and, get this, the Paris Climate Accord. He says, we're going through the worst recession since the end of World War II. For the first time in history, economies of all regions have been hit hard at the same time. Despite the trillions of dollars in relief packages worldwide, global recovery is rather shaky and the outlook remains uncertain. Macroeconomic policy support should be stepped up to bring the world economy out of the woods as early as possible. So, this coupled with another headline, which we have been reporting on for over a year now, should, raise your eyebrows at least. The headline reads, United Nations urges world leaders to declare a state of climate emergency. I won't spend much time talking about it since most of the people listening already know that climate change is just another control card being played by the Illuminati, just like the scamdemic and the false flags. But this does bring up an important talking point, the Great Reset, which is a topic that many people have been speculating about, and one that we discussed in the previous shows. But all that we said in the previous shows, is still relevant. The agenda that they're playing out, it's like a finely crafted game of chess, and it, we've been trying to let people know, like, this is what's going on, this is the next moves they're going to make, and if you're watching, you can see all these things that we've been talking about just continue to unfold. And world domination doesn't look like we imagine it to, until all of a sudden it does. But I feel like it's crazy for people to think that we're crazy now. Maybe 20 years ago, even then, it would have been crazy to think that, oh, they're just conspiracy theorists. The United Nations is nothing. It's not a united new world order or anything like that, even though George Bush said it was. It's, these people are just conspiracy theorists. But anyways, the concept of the world running out of land, populations becoming too large to sustain, food shortages and the power shortages, all that, it's part of what is the real conspiracy to enact this great globalist government. And, I say globalist because that's what they call it themselves. I just mean, a worldwide government. It's a worldwide effort with the Handshake Brotherhood, who I'm talking about, to put the capstone on their pyramid. And with all the systems and the technology available to them now, there's really nothing that we can do to stop them. And so, keep that in mind. But yeah, I'll touch on that point later on. But we can remind our friends and family and neighbors of their schemes. And that's what we want to do now, We want to remind people, what they're doing and the truth that the Bible foretold of how all this would occur thousands of years ago. And that the only true hope is in the Messiah, who, trust me, will return and fulfill the dream given to Nebuchadnezzar, as we're told in Daniel 2:44 through 45. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure. So I think what's important to note here for what we're talking about now is that it says, it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. Of course, we know this is the Messiah returning, and he's going to break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms. It says it breaks in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, just as we're told in Revelation 17 that Mystery Babylon rides a beast of 7 heads and 10 horns. You know, we talk about this pretty often. And we're told that the heads are mountains on which Mystery Babylon sits, and mountains are normally symbolic for kingdoms. And then you have the 10 horns, which are the 10 kings who have no kingdom as of yet, but receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So some people believe that these 10 kings are fallen angels who are going to return with Satan to rule over the beast system. But I think what's clear is that this is a multifaceted system that will encompass the entire earth. You know, as we're told in Revelation 13, that this beast has power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast would be killed. And he caused all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark in their right hand or on their foreheads, that no man may buy or sell except him who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So, you know, we see this is a worldwide system that, you know, was probably unimaginable until our generation. But, all right, so this is the last point, then I'll pass it over to you. This is really crazy. I guess I'm just, you know, going down the rabbit trail here, but it's crazy to think that in Revelation 13 here we're told that the image of the beast is going to be given breath, right? And it reminds me of the 10 signs of the end of the age, which you published in the Great Commission 3. You know, the 7th sign, it says, Armalos, the Satan, will emerge from the stone statue that is in Rome. They say with regard to him that the stone will give birth to him. He will be 12 cubits long, and between his 2 eyes is the distance of a span. He is the Messiah of the party of Esau. He will assemble all the nations and say to them, I am God, and all the nations will believe him. He will say to the party of Esau, bring me the Torah which I gave you. Then they will bring him their book of lies, you know, like the Talmud, and he will assent, saying, truly this is what I gave to you. But this concept is repeated. So we saw, you know, it's weird to think that a stone is going to, you know, give birth, right? It's absolutely crazy to think about. But this concept is repeated in the Apocalypse of Zerubbabel, which is also in the Great Commission 3. I'll quote it. He held me close, and they brought me to the house of filth and scorn. There he showed me a marble stone in the shape of a maiden. Her features and form were lovely and indeed very beautiful to behold. Then he said to me, this statue is the wife of Belial. Satan will come and have intercourse with it, and a son named Armalis will emerge from it, whose name in Greek means he will destroy a nation. He will rule over all peoples, and his dominion will extend from one end of the earth to the other. And the 10 letters will be in his hand. You know, the 10 letters like the 10 commandments. Yes. He will engage in the worship of foreign gods and speak lies. No one will be able to withstand him. And anyone who does not believe in him he will kill with the sword. Many among them will he kill. He will come against the holy people of the Most High, and with him there will be 10 kings, wielding great power and force, and he will do battle with the holy ones. How crazy is that, right? Like, I'm pretty sure this was a rabbinical book, like a Jewish prophecy book.
Hmm.
But there's so much that relates to Revelation here that it's crazy. But I think that that
Yes.
concept is, that a stone or an idol, the image of the beast, that
Right.
word image, it's like
Exactly.
it's like an
Yes.
idol, it's like a stone idol. But
Right.
the beast in Revelation 13 has power to give breath to that thing. So Joy and I
Hmm.
were somewhere recently, I think just a couple days ago, and there was a commercial. I've seen it a few times now, but there's this new show called Wonder Vision or WandaVision, and it's two Marvel superheroes. And I couldn't hear the volume, but I saw on the TV a glimpse of the AI guy, that Tony Stark built. I think Tony Stark, I don't know. Vision.
Yes. Vision.
Yeah, his name is Vision. And then he's with some girl, and they had a
The Scarlet
child.
Witch. Yeah. Hmm.
They had a child. Isn't
Yes.
that's
Uh-huh.
weird, right? So on TFR
Right.
radio, that we do shows on Thursday. There's a lot of New Age teachers on there,
Right.
and they talk about believing that AI is God. That's crazy to me, but that's
Right.
that's what they
Yes, I
they
know.
teach on. And Elon
Uh-huh.
Musk, every time he talks about AI, he's like, "We're releasing the beast." Well,
Yes.
I got to say that the Bible is an interesting book, isn't it? I think people
Yes, most
just
certainly.
don't know what's in it, and they think it's
Right.
boring or untrustworthy. But look at this. Entertainment industries build most of their stories as knockoff and blasphemous versions of biblical stories. Just read the Bible. It's an awesome book.
Hmm.
Anyways, what's your take on all of that? I know that it's a lot, but have you considered that concept before?
Yeah, well, historically, going back into ancient times, we see that even in the Acts of Thomas, there's description of how Satan and other extra biblical texts has worked through idols and has given them voice and made them like living entities, and so that people trusted in, believed in. I mean, there's a whole reason why, the whole idolatry came to be as big as it is, even though, we know that it's false worship and that it's something that celebrates and aligns with giving reverence to the fallen angels who are, not gods, but created beings that were created by the true God. But that this has always been the deception and the way that they have established it and pulled it off, and have, created whole cultures and civilizations, the worship of the feathered serpent, and different symbolisms, even the establishment of sexual iconography, which I believe is connected to, even the deception in the garden and the origins of the children of Belial, the seed of the serpent. And so a lot of these things, again, even with what we see as bizarre as it seemingly is, it holds origin in ancient times and is a repeat. This kind of thing has played out previously. And, Satan always uses the same kind of modus operandi, because it works, just like the same lies, the godhood that he promised to Adam and Eve, to be like the angels, to be like God, to know good and evil. In the same promises he gives to the Illuminati, the power, control, wealth, status, fame, to be like God. These lies and those promises still work. And so he continues to perpetuate the same kind of strategy, the same kind of tactic, and will continue to do so until the end. And even leading to the end, I remember in the book Revelation of St. John, the theologian, how, all the world wonders at the beast and the rise of the Antichrist, and they see all the signs and the wonders, and yet at the end, the fallen angels accuse him of causing them to fall away from their Creator, and how they are fools for having trusted in him and believed in him, and that his appeal was so great that a third of the Most High's angels, that part of the celestial hierarchy, they abandoned their first estate to serve under him and to join in the rebellion of seeking kingdoms to rule of their own. And so, yeah, this kind of theme, even though again it seems bizarre, now that we are in this final generation, we see how the move with technology, the holograms, how they could easily manifest and pull off something as a false alien invasion, or these ancient aliens, extraterrestrials, come to save us, and providing the same kind of mysteries of the heavens, the secrets of the universe to entice us. The technology that even, when Eisenhower met with the supposed extraterrestrial presence, how they promised him technology for exchange, and being able to abduct the civilians and citizens of America, and that this treaty supposedly was inked and agreed upon. I mean, that all sounds bizarre as well. But since that time, all these weird anomalies have happened, and weird and bizarre occurrences have happened all across the world, which seem to confirm and attest to this bizarre reality. And so, truth is often stranger than what we consider to be fiction.
Yeah, it's really weird with all the disclosures of UFOs and stuff now too, right? That the Pentagon
Right.
is releasing. Definitely, it's really weird, and it kind of reminds me of the mark of the beast. If there is really an idol that is given a spirit, I think that it's just gonna be like, basically, it's like a human body can be possessed, with
Right.
demonic spirits. I figure it's probably the same way. They're just gonna have some type of body that's gonna be possessed. But
Yes.
yeah, if that is, if they call it the AI singularity, like conscious AI, and then they, make a microchip that's connected to that AI, which is like, you know, Google in your brain, being able to connect
Right.
to everybody, like telepathically, which, not truly telepathically, but technologically telepathically, without even speaking, just through thinking and being able to find all the knowledge you want just by thinking about it. All this like
Right.
crazy sci-fi technology stuff. Maybe the Mark of the Beast would offer that as well. You see all these incentives for people to go along with the Mark of the Beast. You're gonna be able to buy and
Right.
sell. You're not gonna have to die. You know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Permanent tap into the matrix.
right, and that this is a decision that you can't back away from too. Like once you receive
Right.
it, that's it.
Right.
Your judgment is
Right.
sealed. It says
Yes.
everyone who worships the image of the beast or accepts the mark of the beast has their part
Yes.
in the lake of fire,
Right.
which is the second death. So,
Right.
that is something, regardless of how you interpret it, to absolutely be on the lookout for, because that is like blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
It's like the
That's why there's
unforgivable
such
sin.
right. That's why there's such incredible emphasis on this within the scripture so that, the choices that you make, there are consequences. Which I do want to bring up something else really quickly since um, you had mentioned the different executive orders and things
Hmm.
that Biden had signed. And this has to do with the nuclear deal. There was an article that was released that says the Israelis say they will attack Iran if Biden returns the U.S. to the nuclear deal. And so I'll just read a little bit of this article because, this could be the domino that sets everything into motion with regard to peace comes sudden destruction. And of course, I'm praying against anything like this coming to manifestation. But Israeli officials have made their opposition to the Biden administration returning to the Iran nuclear deal known. Some have even threatened a military strike on Iran if President Biden revives the deal, known as the JCPOA. An Israeli source affirmed this to Breaking Defense in an article published on Monday. Israel needs to know, and fast, whether Washington plans to stop Iran's race to the bomb or take some action to do this. The source said, speaking on the condition of anonymity. The source said that Israeli intelligence is monitoring Iran's nuclear facilities closely. Israeli airstrikes on Syria were also mentioned, which have ramped up in recent months. The pressure will continue and grow as preparation for a direct attack on targets in Iran, the source said of airstrikes in Syria. Israel always claims its airstrike in Syria hit Iranian targets, but they usually strike Shia militias. Um, well, I'll just stop there. But, anyways, it goes on to continue that they want to escalate and, that they're going to take measures, even if they have to go it alone to ensure that, Iran, which they're already past, the point of no return. And so this kind of thing seems inevitable. And striking their nuclear facilities would just set them back as far as time. But the engagement, this could be, because Russia also promises to protect Iran and to step up measures, which, that's the
Hmm.
whole Ezekiel war and the alignment and the setup for what would be, um, all that is laid out in Ezekiel
Hmm.
in the chapters thereof. So,
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's crazy to think that Israel now has turned the tides in the war against Persia. At one
mhm,
point, Persia conquered Babylon, and of course, we know Daniel was there as a captive in both Babylon and Persia. But yeah, this war that is unfolding, it's really crazy. They said to the Biden administration to not even consider negotiating the treaty.
right,
Which makes sense because if Iran does get nuclear weapons, they want to destroy Israel. you know.
right, exactly.
So it kind of makes sense. On the other hand, I don't think that they would bomb Jerusalem simply because that's like their holy site. But
Hmm.
to have a bomb with capabilities of just erasing you off the map, that's it seems like something that you should prevent. It just kind of makes sense, and it actually there's been calls in the United Nations for all nations to get rid of their nuclear weapons. So of
Hmm.
course, most of the nations that don't have nuclear weapons signed off on this thing, and zero of the nations that have nuclear capabilities signed off on it. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, you already see the proxy war between Israel and Iran is taking place.
Yes.
throughout Syria, and
Right.
they're bombing
Hezbollah.
their sites all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so it's it is what it is. It's something to definitely be on the lookout for because
Yes.
it's a war that is taking place. But yeah, the way that we talked about all of the alliances last month, with the war of Gog and Magog, is
Right.
definitely something that you see unfolding, like you pointed out. I'm glad that you pointed that out. But anything else you wanted to say about this subject before we move on?
No. No. You go ahead.
All right. Well, I think that the next article is or event that happened this month is probably one that has kept everyone, scratching their heads, and me as well. The whole Capitol riots and
Right.
the they call it, I don't know what they call it. The people, went up and were trying to overthrow the government. But
Mm-hmm.
well, who benefited from this? From what happened, and why are the gigantic amount of peaceful protesters who didn't participate in the raid being labeled as terrorists?
Right.
Similarly to those who did participate in it. I post online with
Insurrectionists.
right, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, I post online with a conservative viewpoint, and I was actually blocked on Facebook from creating events, pages, and posting in groups, events, and pages for like around a week around the presidential inauguration. And I found out that a lot of people were actually blocked during that time, and it was all conservatives that were blocked. So, it's obvious that there is a lot of fear that there's going to be some kind of rebellion like we're seeing in Europe right now. I don't know if you saw what happened in Netherlands. There's like a lot of European nations, and I guess in South America as well. People are protesting a lot because of lockdowns and corruption in the government. But it definitely seems like they're scared that conservatives here in America are gonna I don't know, make some kind of rebellion or something. Since I couldn't create an event, and that's like all the protests and stuff that happen in DC. They're like they normally start with a Facebook event page, and then everyone, it goes viral, and then thousands of people show up. So they blocked all the people that they thought were going to do that from having the chance to do that. And now they
Preempting.
right, yeah, it's
Pre-crime.
right, yep, and they've painted the so-called terrorists out to be any type of Trump supporter.
Right.
Most who aren't really Trump supporters, they just disagree with the far left, liberal progressivism. They're just conservatives, but there's calls from the left, serious calls to send children of the right-wing conservatives to re-education camps.
Oh my
Kind of
gosh.
like how China is sending the Uyghur Muslims to re-education,
Uh-huh.
aka forced labor concentration camps. I don't think our government has the power or the will to do such a thing right now, but
They have the desire.
yeah, it's similar, how vaccines haven't been mandated yet,
Right.
but it's creepy that there are people living in the US, political influencers that want this nation to shape into a socialistic communist society, decked out with concentration camps and face muzzles and curfews, etc. That with the fact that
Mm-hmm.
some politicians are now claiming that Congress should highly consider requiring a COVID vaccine in order to get a stimulus check. It's
Oh my
nonsense.
gosh.
It actually it
Uh-huh.
just doesn't make any sense, and it's sad to see this type of mentality taking hold in the mainstream. As left wing bandwagoners adopt these hateful rhetorics, and they've been programmed so deeply in their flesh that they claim to be the oppressed while they're actually doing the oppression. Just compare the
Mm-hmm.
Capitol in 2017 when Trump took office. DC was literally burning during, and last year during the BLM riots, cities were being plundered, and
Right.
governments, state governments were being shoved out of their city centers, and even the cops had to retreat. But now this small group of people who are seemingly escorted down a red carpet into the center of the Capitol to take selfies is now being compared to Pearl Harbor, as a day of infamy. And
Right.
the infiltrators, most of whom I believe were just following the actions of an even smaller group of people, they didn't even stick around or make any demands. In fact, the entire operation ran directly counter to the point that the protesters were there for. The peaceful protesters wanted to demonstrate that they didn't have full faith in the election, but this storming of the bridge occurs, and suddenly you hear zero of the actual reasons the supporters were there, and all their voices are
Uh-huh.
now discredited and silenced. It was like
Right.
a tailor-made event for the left to silence this group and to paint them as enemies of the state so that the savior Biden-Harris administration could come rescue America from imminent destruction, and all the right-wingers who, secretly are left-wingers in disguise, they could have a good excuse to vote against, any type of, non-faith in the election. And the question remains, why is there still so much fear and uncertainty in the government? After all that happened, it's not like, they stormed with a bunch of weapons and stuff, but there was an NTAS bulletin published today, the National Terrorism Advisory System. I don't know if you read it, but I'll read it here.
Uh-uh.
And it sums up where Homeland Security thinks our nation is at. So I will read it. The Acting Secretary of Homeland Security has issued a National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin due to a heightened threat environment across the United States, which the Department of Homeland Security believes will persist in the weeks following the successful presidential inauguration. Information suggests that some ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority in the presidential transaction, as well as other perceived grievances fueled by false narratives, could continue to mobilize to incite or commit violence. So this was issued today at 11 a.m. and it expires on April 30th at 1 p.m. And it goes on to say, throughout 2020, domestic violent extremists targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activity. That kind of sounds like, what happened here. People were doing their nonviolent protests, and then you have some
Right.
extremists go and ruin everything. Same thing happened with BLM, which I feel like a lot of this is actually talking about. But domestic violent extremists motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, and police use of force, have plotted and on occasion carried out attacks against government facilities. Long-standing racial and ethnic tensions, including opposition to immigration, has driven DVE, domestic violent extremist attacks, including a 2019 shooting in El Paso, Texas that killed 23 people. DHS is concerned these same drivers to violence will remain through early 2021, and some DVEs may be emboldened by the January 6, 2021 breach of the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. to target elected officials and government facilities. DHS remains concerned that homegrown violent extremists, HVEs, inspired by foreign terrorist groups who committed 3 attacks targeting government officials in 2020, remain a threat. Threats of violence against critical infrastructure, including the electronic, telecommunications, and healthcare sectors, increased in 2020, with violent extremists citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19 for their actions. DHS, right? DHS, as well as other federal agencies and law enforcement partners, will continue to take precautions to protect people and infrastructure across the United States. DHS remains committed to preventing violence and threats meant to intimidate or coerce specific populations on the basis of their religion, race, ethnicity, identity, or political views. DHS encourages state, local, tribal, and territorial Homeland Security partners to continue prioritizing physical security measures, particularly around government facilities, to protect people and critical infrastructure. So did you notice that twice in the bulletin, alternative truth was targeted to
Yes,
discredit
of course.
anyone, to discredit
Right.
anyone with a belief other than mainstream media. In the
Right.
opening paragraph, it said that people were fueled by false narratives, and towards the end, it literally said, citing misinformation and conspiracy theories about COVID-19. You know,
Yes.
it remains that there's just so much fear in the air, and I just want to encourage everyone out there to not focus on the divisions and to truly stay focused on Christ. We don't need to align with any political group, no extremist group. We don't. We're told to come out of her, my people. The Babylonian system, and we're called to be witnesses of Christ. And if we stand aligned with any of these worldly movements, I really believe we're standing on shaky ground. And if people see us standing
Hmm.
on that shaky ground, what are they going to think of the truth of salvation when we share it? We're going to
Hmm.
be discrediting ourselves. So, we're told to be
Yes.
wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And don't let your
Hmm.
testimony get discredited. I've personally had that happen in my life, and it haunts me
Hmm.
sometimes to think about that I chose to do things or believe in certain things that I feel discredited my testimony to people who I really wanted to share with. But from here on out, I just want to encourage everyone to do our best to abide in truth and nothing else.
Yes. Well, the thing is most people don't have any idea of the true nature of controlled opposition, and that Satan works from the top down in taking over, truly organic uh, movements of the people, and that the agent provocateurs, the this other side of it, which is controlled by state, is inter- interjected into these movements and leads them into chaos, the whole order out of chaos, in order to distort and also confuse and also to condemn the true message and the reasons why these gatherings first come together as catalysts. And so not understanding that, even like, the whole attacks on 9/11, not, the world didn't understand as far as a shadow government and fully bought into the official story, terrorists, Al Qaeda, Muslims in a cave, you know, um, all of that. When the even Osama bin Laden working with government, working with the Pakistani ISI to establish the Taliban and Al Qaeda, the base, and this extremist, um, fanatical Muslim movement, all these things were coordinated by the powers that be. And so, not understanding, it's easy to get duped, it's easy to be led astray. And not, most people, again, don't have the insight or the knowledge to really truly defend themselves from getting swept up in plots. Even, Timothy McVeigh, he was used as a patsy for the Oklahoma City bombings. And they wanted to, have the white militant groups, the, the those that like the Minutemen that were the defenders of liberty and standing up for the Constitution of America. They wanted to have these groups here in America be targeted, Christian groups, even the whole thing with Waco and what happened on Ruby Ridge. What we are seeing in this day and age with Christians and constitutionalists and patriots being targeted and labeled the enemy, domestic terrorists, this has been something that has been perfectly orchestrated and coordinated by government and policy for a very long time. It it was not easy for government to establish being able to paint the target on American citizens. And they even have it established now to where, the police and National Guard, just like with what happened at Kent State, with them shooting college students, that was shocking and horrifying to the mainstream press and to the Americans in that day and age. But there's no second thought to going out and suppressing a riot and killing people on the streets now. Cops and National Guard, the military, Blackwater, these kind of paramilitary groups working as contractors for the government, they would have no problem killing American citizens, shooting, simple church going, God fearing, constitutional loving people. And it's unfortunate, but that's what they've been trying to do. Even the whole thing of the Patriot Act was to steal the whole thing of you're innocent until proven guilty. Now you're guilty until proven innocent. They even have a whole nother tribunal system, a military tribunal system to put you through where you can be kidnapped in extraordinary rendition, detained indefinitely, put into a black site, tortured against your will, and then have your coerced and forced confession used against you in a court of law to convict you as guilty. I mean, that's the insanity of what we are living in. And, Orwell, 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, this is what we are contending with. And it's unfortunate because, we've been warning, we've been trying to get people to wake up, to not get caught up in the false left, right, supporting this and getting caught up in that. And unfortunately, people don't have the know-how and the wherewithal to understand the bigger picture. Even though I do think that more and more people are waking up and realize the coordinated efforts of the elites, because they're not hiding it. They have released their protocols, their agenda, the way that the occult technology of power, how they've achieved these things, the Ponzi scheme of money and the Federal Reserve System and debt. It's all coming to a head.
Yes, absolutely, and it's crazy that we are being painted as terrorists even for just being conservatives, I feel like,
Right.
of course, on both ends of the spectrum you have terrorists and extremists, but that's why I'm saying, don't align yourself with right wing, left wing. It just,
Right.
if we're persecuted, let it be a persecution for Christ, not because we're Democrat or Republican.
Right.
You know.
Amen.
But we only have about 10 minutes. Let me see if I have something we can cover quick. So I guess I can cover this one kind of
6
quick.
minutes.
Uh,
Or 5 minutes, actually,
got it.
before break.
This article kind of reveals an interesting perspective on how the false messiah deception is being encouraged. So I believe I posted the link in the description of the video. It says, as American democracy collapses, groundwork is laid for Messiah with Davidic dynasty registry. So you couple this with the armless passage that we read through earlier, the stone, and it takes you down a weird rabbit hole that eerily reminds me of Dr. Joy's book, Antichrist, Cloned Image of Christ.
Yes, fully. Right.
So, if you've followed politics in Israel for the past year, their government has underwent multiple votes, and they have a lot of parties vying for control, but it's all to no avail. They just can't like get a government functioning. I don't know what the issue is, but it's curious how the religious Jews are seeing this. In the article we read, quote, "It is clear that the solution to the government issue," it says it's clear that the solution is a return of the Davidic dynasty. Katz told Israel 365 News, "The solution cannot come from within democracy because that is not a biblical concept. A king from the Davidic dynasty will be the conduit for God's kingship to spread out into the world. It's not a form of global control. It is how rulers will learn how to rule their nations under God." So, let's not forget about the Noahide laws that are attached there.
Exactly.
That are always a part of this conversation. And,
Exactly.
later in the article it says that the Davidic dynasty is about everyone serving the one true king, and that this is based on the 7 Noahide laws that all of mankind is required to uphold, end quote. So, for one, it's really interesting because, it is biblical that the Most High told David that he would never fail to have a son to sit on his throne, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for us, as I would say we're true Israel, we know who the king is.
Right.
But for Israel that's been lied to and fallen prey to the lying scribes and the Talmud, they're still waiting on this. They're still waiting on their Davidic king. So I'm just bringing this forward because it's kind of curious, and I guess it could play into the false Messiah deception as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, because they will bring forth somebody that will have the credentials. It's even like that whole individual. What's his name? The guy that's proclaiming to be king right now. I mean, that could be part of the agenda too. We don't know how it's all going to play out, but certainly I think Dr. Joy's work also elaborates on this theme, and that she certainly has a lot to say about this topic.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting. In the article they say that the Messiah is on Earth. He's just in hiding right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's along with all of the Kabbalistic rabbis, they're all saying the same thing, that the Messiah is here. He's just waiting to be revealed. And they keep like trying to pressure him into being revealed. They're like, he's going to come before Passover this year. He's going to come on this day, the Feast of Trumpets. It's going to happen. Oh, well, he decided not to be revealed today. When he's really revealed, they're gonna be crying. That's what I know. As we're told in Zechariah 12, they'll look upon him who they pierced, and they will mourn for him as one mourns for their only child.
Yes. Jimmy asks whatever happened to the guy that declared himself King John the Third, or whatever his name is. I can't remember. I don't know. I haven't heard anything else more about any of that. But we'll see. But certainly, even like with what you were saying, that they say their king is alive and is just waiting to come out of the shadows. I mean, that is exactly, I believe, where we are with regard to even the prophecy of the last pope, which we're at break now. So we'll pick it up on the other side. We'll be right back, everyone. At 9:02, we'll return.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Join us the second Friday of every month at 9 p.m. Eastern Time for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia.
This is our end of the month prophecy in the news program. And for those of you that are wanting to join us in live chat, you can just go to our YouTube channel, Zen Garcia, and join the live stream there. But we appreciate all of you taking the time to be with us in live broadcast, and we hope that you are enjoying the show and being blessed by the content. Let me turn this back over to you, son.
All right. Well, it's been an awesome show so far. I think we've definitely covered some very interesting topics. I just got a few more things to talk about. And then we'll definitely touch on those articles that were brought up on the post that we made on the YouTube channel a couple of days ago. There were just a few articles that were shared that people wanted to get your opinion on. So yeah, just thank you again for allowing me to come on with you and to speak about all the stuff that's going on. And thank you everybody that is joining in the live stream. It's a real blessing to be able to join with you all and to see you fellowshipping in the chat. You know, everybody is so nice, and I'm just so grateful to have, you know, that community that clearly has the fruits of the Spirit. Unfortunately, you know, I did set up the Nightbot in the YouTube live stream to basically it like looks out for bad words, you know, and it will like delete bad words, and then I think it was like automatically programmed to read anytime somebody types something like word period word, like word dot word, it reads it as a link, so it automatically removes those comments. So I'm gonna have to figure out like what the issue is with that and try to fix that. But I apologize to anyone who has had their comments removed in the chat. And we also have somebody who says that we had blocked their account, but I did check, and you were not blocked, brother. I'm not sure what the issue could be. I know that a lot of channels have been targeted in really weird ways, like people getting unsubscribed and having their comments deleted randomly, and I'm not sure what could cause you to have an account blocked from our channel, but I did check our block list and you were not on there. So yeah, I apologize, but definitely I just want to say hello to everyone again, and thank you, Sister Tammy George, for moderating the chat. It's always a blessing to have people who we get to see all the time, you know, even though we live all around the world. But yeah, you want to say anything to the chat real quick, Dad, and then we'll get moving on.
Yeah, and along the lines of what you were just mentioning, there was an article that just came out about how a certain video platform has censored over 500,000 videos to protect the globalist COVID-19 hysteria narrative. And so certain platforms are very busy expunging the truth and setting up disinformation as the perspective of acceptance. And also for a very long time we've known that our numbers have been fudged, our subscribership has been diminished, people are taken off, unsubscribed daily, they don't receive notifications from our channel, and even the proper as far as the number of views, all that is being messed with, and we have no control over that. Even comments, certain people or certain words or things that you're wanting to say in comments are being deleted or even not allowed to be typed or added. And people are blaming us for these actions, but we're not doing any of this, and we can't control any of it. And so we do apologize for those of you that have been trying to interact or share your comments or ask questions, and that some of these things are again beyond our control and are not things that we are conducting and doing in any manner at all. So please just know that, and realize that we are not in any way trying to. Of course, there are trolls, and we do try to keep those numbers down. But as far as everybody else, we're not, to blame for all that.
Yep, absolutely. We appreciate everybody joining, and definitely we don't want to be the silencers of free speech here. But
Right.
every now and then we do have some trolls that do get the block button. Anyways, moving on to our next article. Actually, you were talking about social media trying to expunge people from having free speech. I don't know if you know this, but Netanyahu, the PM of Israel, he got his Facebook account blocked too.
Really?
Yeah, it's really funny. Twitter ran and Facebook and all the social media organizations ran a huge silencing campaign this month, specifically against DJT.
Yes.
And it was really funny that not even a week after they totally expelled him from the platform, they went to they had the audacity to type about the Uganda election there, and how some people were, I guess they were silencing some of the people's accounts that were trying to run for office, and they're like, we think that it's terrible that you would ever silence someone on their political views and all this, and you're like, wait, what? You just did the same thing.
Right.
They're so hypocritical. It's really it's really crazy.
It's laughable.
Yeah, and just a heads up too for anyone who uses Instagram, they just changed their policies. I guess they've probably been doing this for a long time, but now the new user agreement says that they can go through your entire computer and look at all of your data, all of your search history, your open tabs, any of your messages, any of your functions that you've used on your entire computer. You give them permission to look at everything. So you have no privacy if you have an Instagram account. So I just wanted to...
Oh my gosh, that is insane.
Yeah, it's really crazy, right? So, socialist media monitoring is alive and active. Yeah.
Wow, do you have to be logged on to them, or they can just, okay, you have an Instagram account, you are,
right?
Your whole computer is
my
open
assumption
to
is that whatever device you're accessing it from, that you're just here's my IP address, here's my permission.
Come and check it
my
out.
My permission slip. You can do what you will. And people are like,
wow.
Yeah, I love being targeted with ads, that are relevant to me. I don't care about my privacy.
That is just beyond acceptable. It's crazy.
Yeah, but you know who owns Instagram, right?
Probably Google.
Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, Facebook,
yep.
Google, yeah.
So, socialist media, that's something that we're going to have to escape from eventually.
Oh, no doubt.
Moving on to, I guess, the first article that we'll talk about this hour. Dominion Voting is suing Rudy Giuliani over the election claims that he made about their voting systems. And in a tweet, you can go to the Dominion Voting Twitter site and see this. It says, today legal representatives for Dominion Voting Systems filed a defamation complaint against Rudy Giuliani in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. He continues to make demonstrably false claims, and we intend to hold him and others who amplify such claims to account. So this is like a $1.3 billion lawsuit that they're trying to bring up against this guy. It's crazy, right? So
they're trying to make an example of him, and they want to punish the dissenters so that anybody, even when you have truth on your side, that you don't stand up against the system, and that you don't contest it or argue or even argue against it, because otherwise you're going to be squashed like a bug.
Yeah, exactly. And then on one side of the coin, you're absolutely right, and on the other side, you think, was the right actually played? Because these voting machines, they were used in the same election that DJT was actually elected. So which one of us really knows? I don't know. But it is crazy that even the mentioning of affection prod can get you shut down on YouTube. They put out their article last month that if you even talk about the Dominion voting systems having any chance of being hacked or something, that they could shut your YouTube channel down.
Oh my god.
It's really crazy. You can be silenced on social media. You'll be hated by the left, and after the whole Capitol siege thing, the disinforming franchises, they took to the meme machines to ensure that the voice of thousands of conservatives gathered in D.C. would absolutely not be heard. And most of us keyboard warriors, we picked up those propaganda pieces and we started peddling the narrative, that those who infiltrated, those who were escorted into the Capitol building were Antifa, and that the devil horn dude was an actor, and that, these guys were not true conservative by any means. Some of that is fact, and, it really isn't even debatable that the few who acted out did not represent the gigantic majority of peaceful protesters who were gathered in D.C. But what's sad is that other than the human sacrifices that took place in the Capitol building, what's sad is that the conservatives' voices were efficiently silenced. The entire crowd now faces the label of domestic terrorists, even though the city, in comparison to last year's BLM riots, were extremely, it was peaceful, non-violent, non-destructive. Yeah, docile. But the disinformation propagandists successfully pulled off their campaign to continue driving a division between the citizens of the USA, and the left is now inflated with pride against the right, fueled with hatred and guided by satanic media into actually calling for those re-education camps for the children of Trump supporters. It feels more like an Orwellian novel than could ever have been dreamed up. And that on American soil we have a push for concentration camps. I don't know. Anyways, the real re-education camps are public schools. Anyways, but we don't need to go down that topic. We've discussed.
Well, think
that a
about
lot.
this. Now that this has been all played out, again, all the world's a stage, but now that all this has played out in the manner that they have been able to direct it, how many people are even going to risk trying to set up movements, knowing they're going to be targeted and could be locked up and imprisoned and put into jail just for even trying to organize movements now? And that if they do successfully, have such an organic, peaceful protest, that there's going to be an element that comes in and leads them into chaos, and then causes them, anybody that is a leader of this kind of movement, you can bet they're going to be targeted for imprisonment. And so the powers that be are now able to squash movements before they even begin, and so the whole theme of
Yep.
Again, domestic terrorists, and how they've labeled even peaceful movements which are trying to protest against uh, injustice, true injustice. I mean, the whole entire election being stolen. It's just insane. And yet now the precedence is set that if you try to set up or coordinate or establish a movement, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or whatever social platform, not only can you have your whole account frozen, dissolved, and disappeared, but you can also be liable in action, as far as uh, the police coming after you or the FBI inquiring about your political motives. I
The
mean,
Men in Black.
it's just insane. Yeah, totally. We are living the Minority Report. Pre-crime now, where you are guilty before you even act. It's just insane. It's insane.
Yeah, just look at the end of the statement from the Dominion voting tweet. It says, "We intend to hold him, Rudy Giuliani, and others who amplify such claims to account." Is it possible that socialist media took note of all the accounts that they blocked for making claims of rigged machines? When would they be able to utilize that information in a lawsuit? I don't know. I don't think it would be legal, but Facebook is already handing over all of our information to users, of its users, to corporations and to the FBI. Why not to these people?
Right. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, I think it's probably time that we begin our migration off socialist media altogether.
Right. Come out of her, my people.
Right. I only stay plugged in because I see it as a mission. Like being a digital missionary to all my friends and my family. Who I met in the Air Force and from high school. And all that. But eventually, though, I know we're gonna have to make an exodus from the internet as a whole. As the certificate for connecting is going to be an implant that that we know plenty about. Isn't it? It's hard sometimes to even grasp the reality of reality.
Right.
We've hurdled past the peaceful life of farming, cooking, eating, sleeping, fellowshipping, and worshiping to a life of oppression, suppression, greed, slavery, injustice, and immodesty. Isaiah said it, that evil would become good and good would become evil. And here we are as Americans, back under the reign of child sacrificers. How much patience is reserved in heaven?
Yes.
How much longer are we going to be protected by His almighty mercy? Once the abomination occurs, once Israel gathers in the mountains to escape the cities, what's stopping the immediate destruction of those places where so much evil reigns? There's this Mediterranean restaurant that we go to sometimes, and it's like across the street from a Planned Parenthood place, and it just it's devastating every time you drive by that place. It's just it does not sit properly in you.
Right.
And I don't think that if you're normal that it would sit normally in you, that people are going in there to have their children murdered.
Butchered.
These are not even just hung or executed. This is they're dismembering children in the womb.
Pieces.
When Joy and I saw our child, even when we went, I think it was like a 12-week ultrasound, or it was a while ago, you could see the baby was fully formed.
Yeah.
And at 10 weeks, the child's central nervous system is intact. And that's where all your pain receptors send their signals to, it's not like these children are nothing. They are living, sentient beings that are in the womb. I just think that it's horrible, what's going on in the world. And I don't think that there is going to be a continuation of of mercy for much longer. It's time for us to really amplify our efforts at loving, at sharing convictions with people, and at letting people know, where their decisions are going to take them in eternity.
Yes.
But I don't know if you know anyone like this, or maybe if maybe some of you in the chat are this type of person, but Joy and I know some really beautiful souls who literally live in the scriptures constantly, and it's not like just reading from the scriptures. It's like they're walking in like the New Testament. It's like they're making the Bible every day. It's crazy. Their entire life is just street preaching, feeding the hungry, and building small churches with those who are willing to hear them on the streets when they go out and do street preaching. And they're constantly worshiping and praying. They're in Israel and Turkey and San Francisco, and they're doing their best to reach out to the lost. I think that it's a really beautiful effort. But after spending a month with one of the families over in Israel, it really seems like the harvest that was once plentiful is really dwindling. I'm not saying stop sharing the gospel. I'm just saying like that's what I felt. Like it was like we were working so hard to just share with everyone, and just like, don't you want to know of salvation? You hear these stories of Paul, going to Mars Hill in Athens, Greece, and he preaches, and then all of the city is like revived, and they come to faith, and like we're trying to just preach to anyone who will hear, and like, the people that are willing to hear that, it just seems to really be thinning, and it's just far and few between, and it feels closer and closer to the time where fates have been chosen, and that judgment is going to be ensued. And to the point of those beautiful families, though, it reminds me of Abraham's conversation with the word of sparing a city for the righteous within it.
I was just about to say that. That's where we are.
Right. So I guess to answer my own question, after the Exodus occurs, I know that there's going to be a few who are going to stay behind in the Babylonian system, to continue ministry. And I want to encourage you, if you're listening, if that's you, or you feel that that's your calling, I want to encourage you. I pray that we'll all have that strength, to have no fear of the persecution or the plagues that are going to be poured out on the land, But I do feel obligated as well to remind everyone of the calling to come out of Babylon, that we receive not of her plagues. In her destruction, it said that in her is found the blood of prophets and martyrs and saints. So, I mean, we know that in the destruction, there's going to be missionaries there. And we shouldn't be afraid. But anyways, I'm just rambling now. What were your thoughts on the charges brought up against Giuliani? And, they're saying they might go after Trump as well, and all those who perpetuate that idea that the election wasn't authentic.
Well, it reminds me of how at one time there was a whistleblowers protection law here, and that it was to protect anybody, the citizens of government, public servants, anybody that saw, injustice occurring and being perpetuated by government or by, employees or employers, that these people could come out, and not only would they be protected, but they would be rewarded. But now you see, like with Edward Snowden, coming out and telling the public and American citizens about how the government was spying on them through the NSA, and that they were turning on the video cameras and on your computers and listening in on your cell phones and using these technologies and devices to basically spy on American citizens without even getting a court order I mean, it used to be that, the FBI could not spy on American citizens without a FISA warrant, and that, they had to get a warrant to even tap somebody's phone line. But now they're listening into every conversation, recording every email, watching all of your behaviors. And, he came forth and warned us about that. And since that time, he's put himself at risk. He can't even return to the United States because they'll grab him and then send him to some torture camp somewhere to punish him for what he's done. I mean, this same thing happened to, I forget that individual, that the person that released the information to Julian Assange, that gave him all those documents that work for the military intelligence, and that gave Julian Assange all this information, which he started to release to the public. And even Julian Assange became a target of the United States government as well, had to live in an embassy in Ecuador for 2 years, never even going outside, just to preserve his freedom. And then how MasterCard and Visa targeted him and refused to take support, people that wanted to donate money to him and his group, WikiLeaks, to help them to, to fend off and to stand for free speech. And even we have in the Constitution the right of the free press, that they are constitutionally given the right to report on corruption and to keep the American public informed on injustice. And yet that right is also gone as well. The right even to free speech. With the Patriot Act, everything has been turned upside down. And so, all these things, whereas we used to be a nation that was ruled by law, and that people, citizens could speak out against the corruption of their employers and their representatives. And yet things have been so turned upside down and so twisted that now not only do you not get rewarded, but you become the target, and you are putting your life, your career, your longevity, and even your health and well-being at risk in exposing the dirty little secrets of government and what, the criminal politicians are doing behind the scenes. I mean, even now, whereas we used to have the political, as far as politics, protected from the influence of lobbyists, now the United States Supreme Court has passed a law saying that lobbyists can spend as much money as they want to influence government. I mean, it just shows you how far away we are from what was America in the idealistic concept of, truth, freedom, and as far as everybody having the right to pursue happiness, and just we're so far from what used to be America as the shining beacon on the hill.
Yeah, and as shiny as it ever was, we know that it's a nation founded on blood. As our ancestors,
killing its children.
Our ancestors were, enslaved by the frontierists, and those who came to bring civilization to this land. Our Native American families, They were called the Warm Springs Apaches, the peaceful Apaches, because we never fought. We trusted that the people that were coming to bring civilization would treat us well, and instead, they enslaved us. We became their farmers. We took care of all their housework. We were basically, like African Americans were, 100 years ago, and less than that. We were servants, and even to this day, most of our family is still stuck in poverty. But that's what civilization really has brought to the world is poverty, is oppression, slavery, and even the whole idea that we are really blessed right now, like we have a home, we're going to have a daughter, we have chickens, and we have our own yard, and we can grow our crops, and it is such a blessing, that we have that opportunity. But we can't forget that opportunity was, taken on the backs of wars, and a persecution of native peoples everywhere. And civilization has its roots in Babylon and Egypt and Sumeria, and the fallen angels, of course. And as we talked about last month, I thought that was a really awesome piece when we were talking about the history of Cambodia, and the land of the Nagas, and the Naga princess marrying the man, and then leading the spread of civilization there. But that's really how it has been worldwide. Is civilization oppresses, I feel, what life was meant to be, peace and family, tribe, worshiping, and true freedom, But of course, in this world, the person that's willing to kill and steal is the one that's going to thrive, and those are the ones that started government,
Right.
So, all right, so I got a little bit more that I want to get through before the end of the show, but I do want to just say to everyone in the chat, thank you again for joining. It's awesome to see we have 175 people hanging out with us. It's a blessing.
That's awesome. Praise God.
Hallelujah. So to kind of piggyback off of the last article of how conservatives are now being persecuted and hated, another story that shows this trend is headlined, California church known for its anti-LGBTQ beliefs is bombed. So,
oh my God.
Right? So New York Times, they start its article with, bomb explodes at California church known for hateful views. So they're kind of like trying to justify this, right?
Right, yes.
So, there was no one hurt in the attack, thankfully. But this isn't the first time churches have been targeted for not being progressive. I don't know much about that church, but there is, of course, a possibility that the pastor was actually being very hateful and damning instead of being merciful and encouraging, which is how we should be with those who have not yet received the grace and new life our Savior offers. But the fact is that Bible believers are being hated for believing in sin. The world's now teaching determinism and moral relativism, and that we have no accountability for our actions, that we're just evolved creatures following whatever thought patterns our environment manipulated us into accepting. The world is teaching that we have no free will, that we have no choice, that you have no responsibility for your actions, and that those who believe that they do have free will are deceived lunatics, stupid imbeciles with only hope and faith as their reason. But it's crazy that you have to debate with people these days whether or not they're even making the decision to debate with you. But it makes sense because a lot of people are exactly what they claim to be. Empty vessels, following thought patterns that their environment and entertainment choices influence them into wanting. The flesh that they're so in love with. It provides rewards of dopamine and adrenaline, and when they choose certain things, they get that rush, so they go deeper and deeper into fulfilling their lusts and violent urges until they become criminals or murderers or rapists or pedophiles. And the academic world's teaching that it's not their fault and it's not actually, a bad thing to even be a pedophile. They're teaching that it's not a bad thing.
It's an orientation.
Right. So, while Christians, on the other hand, are saying, you're going to answer for your choices one day, and we're all going to be damned.
That's abomination.
Right. Yeah. And Christians are saying, we're all going to be damned without the grace that we receive through faith in the atoning blood of our Savior. And, when you say that, you got to be careful now, because you might get bombed.
Right.
I suppose it shouldn't be surprising, though, and it isn't really, because the same thing's been happening, throughout time, since Abel argued with Cain that there would be a judgment, and a world after this one, because Cain, he didn't like what he heard. He didn't believe that there was going to be a judgment. He didn't believe in the world after this one, and he killed Abel. Well, what a great joy must Abel be experiencing right now, I pray that we can have that perspective, that when the hour of our temptation comes, just as Messiah knew fully of every twinge of pain that he would feel, to the point that his body sweat blood from the amount of cortisol in his veins, he still fulfilled his mission. And I pray we have his strength to fulfill the missions that we've been called to. To be faithful even in the face of persecution, to even be kind to those that are persecuting us. In prayer that one day that they would repent too and be saved. And maybe it will be so. In Rome, the church grew to massive numbers because of the quiet faith of the martyrs, and the circuses like the Colosseum. And now in China, President Xi is horrified because of the growing number of Christians. As they've been persecuted and silenced, the church it's been growing phenomenally. And it's actually a secret that most people probably don't know much, but it's actually pretty well known in the Korean Missionary Society. I learned in 2012 that there are more missionaries coming out of China than any other country in the East. And now, the official statistics say that there's 90 million Chinese Christians. But I'd say there's probably a lot more. What's really amazing about these believers, in persecuted areas, is that they're really fearless. I really pray that we in the lukewarm West would grow to be fearless like them. Right. These believers, they go to the Middle East, they go into North Korea to share the gospel with zero concern of their lives. And on the way,
sneaking in Bibles.
Right. On the way to take Joy to the airport for her mission trip, where she found faith in Tunisia in 2011 during the Arab Spring, which is actually getting restarted right now. We're at the 10th year anniversary of the Arab Spring, but my wife's mom sent her, baited her on going to Tunisia during the Arab Spring by saying it would be just a vacation, Of course, she knew she was going with missionaries, but my wife was an atheist at the time. But that, if you haven't heard that testimony, she has an awesome testimony of going on that mission trip just so that she could, go traveling and then actually finding faith on that trip. It's a really beautiful and amazing time, amazing testimony. But anyways, I was driving her and her friend to the airport, and I remember she told me about the friend that she was with, and she said that it was really weird that this girl said that her dream in life was to be a martyr.
Wow.
Most people think, I want to be an astronaut or a doctor or, a vet, and this girl was like, I want to be a martyr. Not like a violent jihadist martyr. Like, she wants to go spread the gospel and be killed for it.
That is hardcore.
Hang on real quick. I have to cough. All right, I'm sorry about that. So, we eventually went to a conference with that organization, that missionary organization, and after we were married, and after hearing the testimonies of the missionaries that went there, it wasn't any surprise really that they had this fearlessness. They're in love with the Creator. And while they did speak a form of tongues that I don't necessarily believe in, their faith was rock solid. They weren't involved in the Torah movement, and they didn't speak Hebrew. They hardly spoke English, honestly, but their faith was just so apparent, and I'll never forget that. In fact, it's these families that I've mentioned that are in Israel and in Turkey right now that have no concern for their own lives. During the mission camp, that's what they called the conference, we heard all kinds of testimonies of persecution, of castration, even of torture, and everything that really makes your body cringe and get filled with fear. But you hear from the people who are partners with these missionaries, and you never hear condemnation or sadness or fear. You just hear praises and worship. And I think that maybe we're so tied up with autonomy and pride and self in the West that we get offended by every little thing or scared of every little thing, and we veer off the road of spirit-led believers so easily. But I can't help but think of the command, bless those who curse you. Are we really doing that? I really pray that we are, and I pray that just like the number of believers grew during the Roman persecution and how it's growing in China right now, that it'll also grow here in the West as well. I pray that we can all be kind, to all the internet trolls, and all the progressives who stand pridefully in their anti-conservative views. Be kind and strive to be in peace, be light, be love, and stand firm in your faith in the Savior's life, death, and resurrection. Let that be what separates us from the world. Not whether or not we believe Antifa was responsible for the Capitol attack.
Right.
So what do you think about all that? Persecution and our responsibilities in the face of it. Also, I have probably another 5 to 7 minute piece, so I just saved me some time at the end of the show.
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly that we are called to endure to the end and to be overcomers and to be those that are truly part of the elect, numbered with the elect, and those that stand for truth and for Christ and for the message of salvation and the promise of the cross in the face of this persecution. Because we know that the Christians are targeted. Satan makes war with the saints, and I mean, some are have their robes washed white in the blood of martyrdom, and so these things are on the horizon, if not already in our face. We see already how patriots, constitutionalists, Christians, lovers of freedom are being targeted and made we are the enemy of the state. And so anybody that holds truth, that really has and understands truth and is sharing it, well, these are the people that are having their platforms shut down, their livelihoods, because a lot of them have come to depend upon the AdSense or the benefit that they've received from developing huge audience. And now, these platforms are being stripped from them, and the efforts that they've put forth over decades of time are being absolved in, a matter of minutes and days. I mean, it's so unfortunate, but that's what the system thinks of, the truth seeker. and the conspiracy realists. And so, yeah, I think that, of course, we're not to the point where we're being targeted for our organs and being imprisoned for our political views, thank God. But I do pray that as things even get worse, even though I pray they don't get worse, but as they do, that we stand upon our convictions and that we stand for truth and we stand for our faith, and that we're able to look the enemy in the eye and not fear, not cringe, and not turn away.
Amen. Just as Isaac said.
Hey, Nora.
Just like Isaac said, bind me tightly. When he was.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Being taken to be sacrificed on Mount Moriah. He said, bind me tightly. That same thing. I pray that we're bound tightly in our faith. But the last thing I want to talk about is that we made a post on the channel, and there was just a couple things that were brought up. One was the Chinese soldiers in Canada. Sevenhead wanted us to talk about that. I looked into it, and I couldn't find much confirmation of what's really going on, so I don't really know what's going on there. Just I don't know what's going on a lot of things, and I don't want to just spread my own thoughts. But China has a lot of American soldiers there. America has a lot of Chinese soldiers here. We have education exchange programs where we train each other's soldiers and stuff. So I don't know what's going on over there, but the international agreements and globalist governance is definitely spreading. Somebody wanted us to talk about the People Are Sheeple song inspired by Depeche Mode's People Are People. I didn't see that one, but it sounds really interesting. People Are Sheeple song. Teresa Guerrero wanted us to touch on why is it that some of us see truth and others can't. That's a really great question, and I think that honestly it's the Most High that reveals himself to us. So if we have had our eyes open to the light, we should just be grateful to that. I think that a large part of it is that you have a love for the truth, and because you have a love for the truth, that's why he reveals himself to you. But none of us would be able to know if the Holy Spirit didn't work in us, so let's be grateful for that. But lastly, what I wanted to touch on was that someone asked, is the Biden administration really legit? And we know the world's a stage, but I don't believe most of us know what's going on, and I really don't believe in a lot of what we see anymore, from any news source, because there's so much propaganda. But I think who probably Alexandra is, but she puts out some really great videos, and she is a really intense researcher. Joy and I are always impressed with the amount of research that she puts into her videos. But just a couple days ago, she released a video that really sums up what's going on in the world pretty well in politics in America. She identifies two components of the New World Order: the Dark World Order and the False Light World Order. And it's pretty obvious who the dark forces are, but the false light forces are really quite tricky to see through. So if you do look, it kind of makes sense though, since the false Messiah deception is going to be really strong. The false light it's presenting itself as light, but it's working with the dark forces to usher in the greatest amount of chaos and division so that they can come and conquer and create order that will seem like real salvation to those who don't know true salvation through the true King of heaven and earth. To fix all the craziness going on right now, it really seems like we're being set up for globalist governance, and the whole Nasara Gesara occultic Great Reset thing seems like a real possibility. And the rulers of darkness of this world, whether right wing or left wing, it doesn't matter it doesn't matter who sits on the throne. If you give somebody control to print currency, those are the people that have power. We live in a corporate governance. So the rulers of the darkness of this world, they've left all of the economies of the world in complete shambles, and they've gained so much support from the public to take away personal liberties and freedoms. And probably Alexandra highlights a lot of videos in her video, little clips to the effect of that Trump is not gone, that the current administration is totally phony, and that we really that we should be praying hard, basically. Well, what do I know? I don't know very much. That I do know, but there's just so many combating narratives, and there's so much disinformation in the alternative truth movement now that propaganda is being sold as alternative truth to make alternative truthers look like Looney Tune conspiracy theorists. So what do I know? I know that there's a lot of memes, a lot of reports, false reports, maybe real reports, but I don't know. I can't verify everything that's going on. What I do know is that Christ is King. And that's the truth that I stand on, and that's the truth that I would die for. And all this political stuff is just a stage, meant to take our hearts and our minds off of the true King. So with that, I'll just leave this reminder of the first and greatest commandment: to love the Lord your God, Yahuwah Elohim, with all your heart and mind and strength. And secondly, to love your neighbor as yourself. That's who we're called to be. Lovers of God, lovers of our neighbors. A church that, if persecuted, is done so unjustly. Don't align yourself with anything but Christ, and you'll never be led astray. So with that, I will sign out. Blessings and shalom, and thank you again for having me, Dad. It was an awesome show as always.
Always my great honor to share this platform of truth with you. Just remember, everybody, that we'll be back in 2 hours. I'll be on with Rob Skiba, continuing the Genesis Revisited series. I think it will be our 27th installment thereabouts. So please join us midnight to 2 a.m. Eastern. And we appreciate, again, all of you. May you be blessed, and may the Most High give you discernment and give you an eye for truth. And as Justin says, don't get caught up in the political. Keep your eye on the kingdom. Seek ye first the kingdom. Everything else will take care of itself.
Amen.
Good night, all. Shalom.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you, and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.